the last video, we saw that we can manipulate trig functions in such a way that they can actually make some square roots a little bit easier. We had the example where we had square root of 1 minus cosine of 6x, and we saw that if we applied a power reducing formula there, we could manipulate it to be a one-term expression under that square root, and it could be a perfect square. And so that's kind of a nice thing about trig, is it has so many different formulas and identities that really allow us to manipulate the equations that we're given. We can go between sines and cosines very easily. We can get those plus ones, minus ones in there very easily. We can completely rearrange the structure of the equation, and that's useful, especially with square roots. So before I get into the theory too far, let's say we had an integral that looked like this. Let's say we have integral dx over x to the fourth square root of 9 minus x squared. And we're going to solve this after I kind of get into a little bit more of the theory, but first just kind of look at this for a second and say, well, what can we do? Well, maybe we think some sort of use substitution. We see an inner function here, but that's not going to simplify with the outside. Partial fractions, well, two different factors, but they're not going to really break up very nicely. We just have a 1 already in the numerator, so we can't simplify that numerator anymore. The thing that's causing us a lot of trouble here is that square root. That square root wasn't there. If we could simplify it in a way that could go away, that would help us out immensely. And so that's kind of the goal here. We're going to be using trig substitutions to help us out with these square roots. Because what we saw in that last video is we could take that square root that had two terms under it, get down to one term, and then it would simplify very nicely. So let's think about this a little bit before we jump too far into it. So just to write out a few ideas, sometimes it can be easier to replace a variable of integration with the trig function that will allow us to open more doorways up to get down to one term, like we saw in that last video, what we did there. Most commonly, we will use or make the replacements x is equal to a tangent theta, x is equal to a sine theta, x is equal to a secant theta. Let's think about why that would be. So I'm going to get a little theoretical here. Let's look at some pictures. So let's start with that first case. X equals a tangent theta. Let's think about what the picture would look like around that. So given a triangle theta, if we're to rearrange this, x over a is equal to tangent theta, or tangent theta is equal to x over a. That means the opposite is x, the adjacent is a. What does that leave for that third side? The third side then would be a squared plus x squared. Just using the Pythagorean theorem, square one side, square the other side, add them together. Notice we have that square root hanging out in there. That's the goal, is to make those easier. So we should be thinking a way to connect this to the first example I wrote up. Think about the x equals a sine theta. Well, for a given angle theta, the opposite is x, the hypotenuse is a. And using our Pythagorean theorem, that means the third side was a squared minus x squared. That's looking a little bit more similar to that first example that we had, or that example I started off writing on the screen, where we had the 9 minus x squared. And then the third case, remember, the third replacement I said we're most commonly going to be making is a secant theta. Try and make that a right triangle, that's even worse. Do it this way. Alright, so here, for a given theta, secant is equal to x over a, meaning the hypotenuse is x, and the adjacent is a, meaning the third side, x squared minus a squared. So why do we make those three replacements? Notice each one is kind of containing a cofunction in there, because cofunctions, if we use one of each of the cofunctions, it gets us pretty much everything about the triangle. We have every known pairing, x and a, opposite and adjacent, x and a, opposite and hypotenuse, and then x and a, the hypotenuse and the adjacent. I think I messed up one of those. But we see each pairing of known angles, and that gets us to the unknown third side. Notice that that square root is on a different side in each of the three cases. Now, choosing them these three ways and not using their co-functions make it a little bit easier, and we'll see why that would be. So before I actually want to go on to solve that problem, I want to define this in just a different way. I've given you the picture approach, but let's take the inside of that square root, the a squared plus x squared. Let's replace that in terms of what we say we're going to replace it with. This is going to be under a square root. I'm not really concerned with the square root at this instant in time. I just want to see what this turns into. So a squared would be equal to, well, if we square the x that we're saying we're replacing a tangent theta, so kind of three different cases here, we would have a squared tangent squared. And then we notice we can factor out both the a's. A squared would be left with a 1 plus tangent squared x. And now 1 plus tangent squared, that's secant squared. Let me use theta, not x. I'm going to confuse myself and you. So I'm going to use tangent theta, that's what we're replacing it with. And notice we get down to a squared secant squared. And so then when we go to take the square root of this thing, notice both of those clean up very nice. The square root of a squared is just a, the square root of secant squared is just secant. And so that is the benefit to doing these replacements, is we're going to end up with that nice one term inside of our square root that will be very easy to find the square root for. Let's look at the second one. We have a squared minus x squared. Well, we can replace the x with what we said we wanted to replace it with, the a sine theta, and we need to square both of those things. I factor out my a squared, have 1 minus sine squared. What is 1 minus sine squared? It's cosine squared. And that would be what it is. But again, notice, if we were to take those square roots, we start with something we didn't know how to take the square root of, that first thing under blue. And now that we have the a squared, that is just a, cosine squared, square root of it is just cosine. Again, we've turned it into a very easy problem. And finally, let's take the x squared minus a squared. We're replacing the x here with the a secant. Once again, we can factor out that a. And then secant squared minus 1 is tangent squared. So like I said, we've chosen them in such a way that we end up with a nice answer. We don't have to worry about switching the negatives. But again, if we're to have that under the square root, we end up with a very nice result. So let's come, well, I need to define one other thing first. So when we are choosing to create these trig functions, we are choosing to create them much in the same way we did with u substitution, right? U substitution, we just create a letter u, we use that to represent something else. We have to remember at the end then to either go back and replace the u with what it should have been, or if we have a definite integral, we can edit or adjust those limits accordingly. Well, here we're choosing to replace our x with a trig function. And trig functions are nice in a lot of ways. They have this flexibility of being able to use Pythagorean identities or other sorts of properties or identities that go along with the trig functions, but they're not so nice in that they are not, they don't have an inverse until we restrict them. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we need to restrict these functions. We need these substitutions to be reversible. Because we have to go back and once we get that final answer for the indefinite integral, we have to go back and plug in what the trig function really should have been. Because of that, we need to be able to solve for what that trig function should have been in terms of x. We need them to be reversible, which means we need an inverse. Well, we can only have an inverse if a function is one-to-one. So we're going to apply the same restrictions we saw in trig, apply the same trig function restrictions so that we do have a one-to-one inverse function. Therefore, for x is equal to a tangent theta, we're not even letting, we're restricting. Restrict theta to be between pi over 2, negative pi over 2, and pi over 2. Can't equal the pi over 2's because there's an asterisk there. For x is equal to a sine theta, we're going to restrict the theta to be between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. This time, though, it can touch the pi over 2's. And then for x is equal to a secant theta, restrict the theta to be between 0 and pi with the additional restriction that theta is not equal to pi over 2. That is an undefined value, that is an asymptote. Alright, so now we have everything we need to do that initial integral. So again, our goal, our example here, is to evaluate the integral dx over x to the fourth square root of 9 minus x squared. So the first thing I need to do is choose which replacement I'm going to use. So what I want to look at is that square root. I need to, when I replace that x with one of these three options, the a tangent, a sine, a secant, I need to work out to where we can get down to just that single term answer. So we're just comparing with what this looks the most like. 9 minus x squared. The x squared is in the second position, we're subtracting it. So here we had a squared plus, that's not what we have. A squared minus that, that's it. And then here we had an x squared minus, so it's in the wrong order. We need the x squared to be in the second position. Again, comparing it to these, we needed the 9 minus x squared. So we need to be using the a sine theta. So we're going to let x equal a sine theta. Now the question is, what is that? That a is not just a. And again, kind of compare to what we were doing up here. The a is whatever that first term is under that square root, but that's already been squared. So we need to take the square root of whatever's under that square root. So here being the 9, square root of 9, we need to be using a 3 for our a. So we're going to let x equal 3 sine d theta. Well, we need to replace all the x's with those new sine thetas, and that means we also need to have the dx's replaced as well. If we're going to integrate this thing, we need all those variables to be the same. So the derivative of this would be 3 cosine theta. And so now let's make these replacements. So we'll have the integral dx is 3 cosine theta over, that should have a d theta on it, d theta, over x to the fourth. We have 3 sine to the sine of theta to the fourth, everything there to the fourth, square root of 9 minus 3 sine theta squared. Let's keep simplifying this to see how this helps us. So we'll have the integral, we'll have cosine theta over, we'll have 3 to the fourth, and I just completely dropped that 3 on the numerator too. 3 to the fourth, sine to the fourth, we do have to apply those to both. I'm not going to multiply it out yet, I'll leave that for a little bit later on, just so I don't have to worry about it if it simplifies it all. And then the square root, under that square root, we now have a 9 minus 9 sine theta. The advantage to having the 9 in that second position, the reason we use that 3 there is to have 9 in both positions. We can factor that off to make our lives a little bit easier. And so we'll have the square root of 9, 1 minus sine squared theta. I left the squared off before, I need that to be there still. D theta. Right, so I'm going to do a few things here inside that square root. And I'll leave everything else the same for one more line. Well, for one, the square root of 9 is just 3, so I can bring that outside. And then the 1 minus sine squared, that turns into a cosine squared theta using our Pythagorean identity. So that cleans up very nicely, and that's the whole reason for doing this, because then we get those nice squares, perfect squares under those square roots. And so now I'm going to really clean this thing up. We see that the 3's on top and bottom will cancel. The 3 to the fourth we can bring outside. We still have a cosine theta over sine the fourth theta. The square root of cosine squared is cosine theta d theta. Now, typically we'd have an absolute value around this, but remember we applied some initial restrictions, and so we could restrict it in any way that we wanted to, and we could keep it in the first quadrant if we wanted to. And so I'm going to leave off those absolute values, and now I'm going to cross off those cosine thetas. So we'll have 1 over 3 to the fourth, the integral of 1 over sine to the fourth d theta. And so we can now, 1 over 3 to the fourth, I'm going to go ahead and write as 81. I'm going to bring that sine to the fourth up to the numerator as a cosecant to the fourth theta d theta. And now we have to use some of those earlier trig skills that we were working with in the last video. In fact, the fact that cosecant to the fourth, we don't know what its antiderivative is, same way we didn't know 1 over sine or sine to the fourth. So let's think if we can break this thing down in terms of some more simple trig functions. Well, I can write cosecant to the fourth as cosecant squared times cosecant squared, and cosecant squared is simply cotangent squared theta plus 1 cosecant squared theta d theta. And I'm doing this because I've reduced my exponents. I'm looking at some things that now have some antiderivatives, kind of, or at least I'm getting closer to, but I'm still going to have to use a step where I use some u substitution. So I'm going to let my u equal cotangent theta. Well, du is equal to a negative cosecant squared theta d theta, meaning that, well, let's just go and do the replacement. So 1 over 81, the integral cotangent squared will be a u squared plus 1. Cosecant squared d theta is a negative du. And now we have something that we can finally integrate. We had to use trig substitution first, and then we actually used u substitution within that as well. So the antiderivative of, I'm going to bring the negative to the front, the antiderivative of u squared is u to the third over 3. The antiderivative of 1 is u. Then we have our plus c. But I can't leave these like this because u was just a made up variable to allow me to integrate a little bit easier. So I have to replace what u is really representing. And u was cotangent. But really keep in mind cotangent. We made that up too. Cotangent wasn't what we started with. We started with x's. And so let's think about what cotangent would look like in terms of x's. So I'm going to do a little sidebar here. We originally let x equal 3 sine theta. So let's think about what that picture looks like. Theta, the opposite is x, the hypotenuse is 3. That would mean that our third side was the 9 minus x squared, exactly how we drew it out above. So given this picture, we can now figure out what cotangent theta is. Cotangent theta, well, cotangent is equal to the adjacent squared 9 minus x squared over the opposite, the x. And so we have the cotangent, we can replace that with what it should have been, the x's. We'd have the square root 9 minus x squared over x to the third power. And then there's a one third coefficient on that, plus cotangent square root of 9 minus x squared over x plus the c. And so there's our answer. So we had to do multiple steps here. This is not a simple, easy problem. It's not saying that trig substitution makes these things one-line answers. We shouldn't expect any of these integration tricks or any of these integration techniques to make a problem a one-line answer. It's just not going to happen. But what it allows us to do is to solve the problem. We started with an integral we didn't know how to solve. We didn't know how to handle that square root times an x variable there. So we used trig substitution because we recognize that that helps us with roots. We got to an answer that was a lot cleaner, but still not something that we could integrate, 1 over sine to the fourth. So then we had to use some other trig knowledge. We had to write that in terms of the cosecant, in terms of its reciprocal. We had to break that down in terms of smaller exponents using our Pythagorean, and then we used some u substitution. We finally got to our answer in terms of u because that became a relatively easy problem to integrate. But then we have to remember that u and the thetas are all made up variables. They're variables that we use to help us simplify the problem. So we have to remember to replace the u's and then replace the thetas. So these problems do require a little bit of practice. We do want to first recognize which of the 3 replacements we want to make. That is the first key. And so it is just a matter of recognizing which format do we have. Do we have the a squared plus x squared, a squared minus x squared, or x squared minus a squared under those radicals?